heckle, throw paper, whatever you want. Like, this is kind of a chance for all of us to learn together. We got a lot to learn. I'm going to try to get through it in about 45 minutes. Okay, let's see what we can do here. If you end up finding this presentation online, go ahead and make sure that you also hit down when you're on some of the pages. So it goes left and right, and then goes up and down. So if you're looking for references for code samples and kind of the stuff that we're building, come check it out. There's a lot of code sandbox embedded examples as well. Who here has messed with code sandbox? It is VS Code in your browser. Like, it literally actually uses the full VS Code editor interface running inside of whatever magic that they do. So check it out. Also a great way to get coding while you're on the internet. All right, now, who here has done Vue, has written some Vue, has made a little hello world? Okay, so we have a Vue knowledge in the room. That's super good. Okay, who here has written, I'm going to assume if you've done Vue, you know some ES6. Okay, okay, we're down with arrows and okay, all right. Spot the runtime error in this code. The runtime error. Help me find the thing that goes wrong at 11:30 on a Friday night. My cat is named Seamus. If you can't tell, he'll be a feature of this presentation throughout the rest of the evening. Who here can spot the error for me? Yes. Ooh, I would definitely get in a fight with somebody about that. That should have been single quotes, but not a runtime error. Definitely a personal preference and a prettier error. Yes.
I'm embarrassingly not familiar with Fetch, but it's JSON promise.
It is a promise, actually, especially, right, you gotta wait for it because it could potentially block. That's a good one though. Where's the error? Let's get further down the code. Let's make some assumptions about something that may or may not return from that API. Yep.
Oh, there's no cats.
What's that? What happens if there's no cats? Now, luckily, we did say, hey, let's see if cats exist. Okay, let me say and okay, because we're being real elegant, we're gonna do it in one line. Let me say, okay, so we got a cat. Maybe. What if we don't find a cat?
Right.
What if we don't find a cat? This talk is on TypeScript eventually and why TypeScript is good. And I fell in love with TypeScript when I was trying it out, and it told me that my find was unsafe. And I was like, screw you, TypeScript, I'm going to code the way I want to code. And then I realized if I try to hit cat.disposition, we're going to get an uncaught type error. Who's ever gotten an uncaught type error? Yes, you know the pain. And it's because we don't always get what we want from find, right? We might get undefined. So this is something that TypeScript's going to help us with eventually. And wouldn't it be great if we could bring some of that stuff into Vue with us, all right? A couple of other things, like what is the actual shape of the server response? Like, what are the keys? Am I guaranteed to get an array of cats? What if cats is a big, gigantic object with a bunch of keys that are numbered, or cats by name? What are all the keys that I have in a cat? Is disposition actually really a thing? Where in my code do I have some kind of guarantee of that? And of course, the one we found, right? What happens if we can't find Seamus? So, a lot of the tooling and a lot of the stuff around the advances in JavaScript over the last couple of years have been about making it a little safer and making sure that, like, the code that we write is code that we can count on, and hopefully we can find most edge cases. But to get there, we got to establish a couple of concepts. So we're going to be building from the ground up, and we need to cover 4 major steps before we can get TypeScript into and type safety into Vue. Now, the first thing we're going to learn are decorators, okay, which is a really cool word. We're going to learn about class-based Vue, not just object-based Vue. We're going to do a little crash course in TypeScript. And then we're finally going to put TypeScript in classes in Vue. You can see like the abstractions on top of that, all these different levels of tech that we have to jump through. Okay, so we're going to assume we're down with Vue. Okay, we've got some Vue understanding. But we're also going to make an assumption about ES6 classes, right? That's just class thing or class thing extends. Who here has written some React code before? Okay, you ever done a thing extends React component, right? If you've done that, you've used ES6 classes. And they are essential to kind of get where we need to go. All right, any questions so far, right off the bat here? Cool. So we are going to do this by refactoring the application 3 times. We're going to write a little application. This is our cat feeding simulator. We're going to write it in vanilla Vue to start with. And it's going to feature a couple of things. There's going to be some buttons for each one of my cats. And when you click one of the cats, it's going to set the active cat. You then have the option to feed that cat. When you feed them, their mood is going to change and also the noises they make. And then we're going to simulate 5 minutes have passed by hitting reset, and then they're going to be hungry again. We're going to use computed state because I love that about Vue. And all of this is live inside of our code sandbox editor. And if you guys want to mess with this, you can go hit this online through the presentation. I'm actually going to open this in a separate tab so we can just take a quick look at the app and see what it's doing. All right, so here's Seamus. We're going to click Debris. Okay, we're going to click Simone. And if I click Seamus and I feed him, he's going to go from surly, and now he's snuggly, and now he's less angry at me, okay? And now we're going to go over to Debris. We're going to feed Debris. Okay, he gets sleepy. And then Simone, when we feed her, she likes to throw up, so she's now surly when we feed her. But I can reset all of their states, and we're back to a resetted state. Okay, so that's our very, very basic application. It's reading some data. It's going to give us some UI interactions that we're going to mess with, all right? And it looks like this. Our data, I'm going to zoom in just a little bit here so we can see this a little bit better. Our data is... You want me to change? I can't change this one to a light color scheme, unfortunately, because it's all embedded. I will zoom in farther, though, so we can see a little bit better, okay? And we're going to go zoom. Okay, so here we go. So we've got simply the cats that we've imported. It's a list of objects of cats. We select a cat by name, right? In Vue, you want to store the absolute minimum amount of data and then derive everything else through computed values, okay? Our computed cat is simply whichever cat is selected by name. We can figure out overall what our disposition is by just simply checking if the current cat is fed. Okay, really, really straightforward stuff here. And then we got a couple of methods for when we click on buttons. I can feed a cat or I can reset. And this is all pretty straightforward Vue stuff, right? I'm saying this.cats.find is fed equals true. And of course, our template, we don't need to dive into all the details of the template, but we're using kind of the goodies about the Vue ifs and the Vue fors. You know, Vue for kitty and cats, and I'm able to print out all the different buttons there, okay? So really straightforward, vanilla, single file Vue applications. Any questions on this app and the decisions made around this app? Okay, good stuff. Okay. To start the steps, okay, to get forward where we need to do in order to have TypeScript in Vue, we got to learn a couple of things. One of them, the first thing, is decorators. Who here has seen this at something in front of some code? Any Angular developers in the room? We got our 2-ish Angular developers. This is the thing that freaked me out about Angular 9.7, whatever they're on right now, okay? And that is all of these, what are called decorators, all over their code. And I couldn't figure out what the heck it was. And everywhere I did research on it, it was a lot of words that were very scary. So it's pretty obvious that like these lines are adding some stuff to our code. They're enhancing something. It's pretty obvious, right? There's some kind of an annotation syntax here. And I want to point out that we're generally going to see decorators around classes, okay? So what is the enhancement that they're doing and how does it work? All right, all you need to know about decorators is that they are a higher order of function. They are a function that wraps another function, okay? In Vue, have you ever wrapped a component in another component in Vue? Anybody? Like a little Vue app, wrap another? In React, higher order components are a big deal. If you've used Redux or Vuex, you'll often wrap some piece of display in some other piece. In our case here, and this is not a decorator, but this is the concept I want to really hit home. If we have a print cat function that just takes a name and prints it. If I wrap that function in a says meow function, I can take in print cat and then return a function that's ready to take in a name. And I have ultimately enhanced my output with something else. Isn't that cool? I have one function. It does something very dumb, very stupid, and very simple. And I can wrap it in something else, and suddenly it's a little smarter. It's a little, it is enhanced. It has been decorated with extra functionality. And what that looks like here, right, if we just pull them together, what I'm actually returning here is not a value, okay? This is a function that's ready to take in what? What does print cat name and sound take in as an argument? Would you guess? Yes. Name. That's because, as far as it's concerned, this guy right here is waiting to take a name, okay? All right, so that's a higher order function. We use this all the time in JavaScript. This is also known as functional composition if you come from the functional programming world, and it's kind of how we get that almost OO, object-oriented approach to enhancing and extending classes in other languages. All right, so functions can already do this. Why do we need decorators? If I got higher order functions? Well, ES6 gave us classes, and everybody was super stoked about classes, and we converted a bunch of stuff to classes, and then we went, crap, I can't enhance them now. We don't have higher order classes. So we had to invent something to bring this higher order functional composition to ES6 classes, and that's how we got decorators. And decorators are, I think, stage 2 right now, which means they're not part of the official spec. They'll probably come out in the next version, all right? So basically, right, if I've got cat, okay, and I say cat equals new cat down here, I have an instance. I have an instance of a cat class, okay? How would I get say meow onto this cat class and enhance it, one of its member methods with that new function? Well, it's actually pretty simple. Decorators have a signature. They're built right in, okay? If you put the word, I'm gonna go right here. If you put the word, it's really not very clear. That says meow, sorry, yay for gray on darker gray background. If I put an at says meow, we're gonna zoom right in on that. Is that a little clearer? You guys see that? Okay. If I put an at before a function I define, it automatically is a decorator. And ES6 will immediately send 3 things to that function, all right? Says meow up here, at says meow down here. We get 3 things automatically sent to that. We don't have to do anything else. The first thing is the entire cat class, is the target, is what it's called, okay? So that's everything inside a cat, okay? So we have the opportunity to go mess with everything in this class. The second thing is the actual name of the method, right down here, that we're messing with, okay? In our case here, this would be print cat. All right, so far we have the whole class, we have a reference to the name of the method we're messing with, and finally, and this is the weird one, we get a descriptor object. All you need to know about descriptor object for what we're doing right now is if you mention descriptor.value, you are given print cat. Okay, so that thing that we did before when we wrapped a function in another function, we had direct access to the functions. Guess what? That's how you get it right here. Okay, so we're literally reaching into an object. We're able to pull out any method that we decorate by doing this technique. So now, this fn right here, for anyone following along, what is the value of this fn right now, this function, this little variable? What is the value of fn right now? If it is being given access, yes. It is print cat the method, okay? It's this guy right here. But it's how we're gonna get the cat's name eventually, right? So the whole deal with decorators is like, how do I reach into an object, get something out of it, and then go mess with that something? Well, we've been able to grab the actual print cat function right there. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go write our own function. We're going to replace it, okay? Just like we did right up here, right? We effectively just kind of like, yeah, I'm gonna make my own thing and return my own function. Well, guess what? Now we're gonna write our own little function, and our own little function is gonna take in name just like it expects already, except now it's gonna says meow. You're probably wondering why we're using .call. Who can tell me what .call does in JavaScript? This is good old vanilla JavaScript. We've had it since ES3.
Makes the this whatever you want it to.
It makes the this of a function whatever you want it to. Now check this out. All right, for the win, what is the this for our function? It's cat. It's the whole cat object. See how we're getting into the guts of JavaScript here, and we're messing with what this is. So basically what we're saying is, you know what? Grab print cat, make it say something else, and let's just make sure that the this of print cat stays the same. That's it. And this is about the bare minimum amount of code you ever have to write to go write a decorator to go mess with some other class. Angular relies on this almost exclusively to bring in all the functionality. If you've ever seen an Angular class, it's just ES6, and you just throw decorators. You could stack them on top of each other forever, and you end up with some really heavy, very functional classes that can do a whole bunch of stuff. And all you're doing is you're just putting little at strings before all of the methods in the classes. Any questions specifically about this kind of decoration? Yo. That is just a decorator. That is a vanilla decorator. You don't get to use this without Babel right now, so it does have to be transpiled. But what's crazy is that this is transpilable down to ES5. It'll work in Internet Explorer 9 if you just run it through the right Babel. Yo.
If I can put says meow inside my class, why wouldn't I just put the says meow function?
Think of it like this. What if you had this awesome library of utilities that you need to... A logging utility, great example of this, okay? You got your logger something. And as you're writing your code, you want to import that logger and just dump it on a bunch of your methods as you're working. That's generally how you treat this. You're going to treat your decorators kind of like they are. They're just very generic tools. And as you go build your specific classes for the implementation for your application, you're going to decorate them. You're going to decorate them with some extra functionality. And this is generally used in cases where we want to let someone write some classes that work in our framework, or we want to write something that lets something kind of intercede. Like a great example is this, like log and time. And there's some really famous time npm packages out there that are just like this, so you can get into your classes, figure out how long some of your methods might take. Any question? Just yawning? Okay, cool. All right. I'll try to keep you awake. I promise this is going to go to almost 8. All right. Any questions, guys? Yo.
So you're showing a method decorator here. Is there a difference in the function signature between one class decorator?
Well, I'm glad you set me up perfectly for that, because we're going to decorate a full class next. So this one's actually way easier. This is way, way simpler, because we don't need to necessarily juggle this, like the scope of where our function is operating, and that's a big deal to JavaScript. Our class is just our class. So I'm going to get a little bit fancy with this one, and I want us to take a look. Okay, feed cat. Okay, we now have a decorator called feed cat. Now, I'm executing a function here. I'd like to point out we are not executing a function right here. Okay, and that's because our decorators can just return a function if they want, right? So you can take a decorator and you can pass arguments to a decorator and do different things with your decorators, okay? So we've got feed cat, he's right up here, and we have a fed recently Boolean, okay, that we're gonna check. And then basically the only thing that's actually sent to a class decorator, the only thing is target. And what was target? The whole class. Okay, so what we've done is we've been able to, on the fly, encapsulate the fed recently argument, and now our decorator is just this guy. Ta-da! That's encapsulation in JavaScript. You heard that magic E word. This is kind of one of those examples of, how can I encapsulate fed recently but also generate a function that's usable by something else? And then all we do here is, now I can go add anything I want to the class prototype, because guess what? Classes are just functions in JavaScript, right? They have a prototype. They have a prototypal chain that we can go decorate with extra functionality, like if he's been fed recently, he's not hungry. Ta-da! Now our cat can have that information on it. Any questions? Yo.
So how does the reference to the class object get passed to target? Is it just target a magic word, or is it like whatever the first parameter in that return function?
So, since I got a little fancy on this one because I like the idea of encapsulation. This is the actual signature of a decorator, okay, a class decorator, which would literally just be, give me, we could have called this something else, right? But it ultimately is only going to be given target, and that's it. And target is, of course, the whole class. Now, what I did was I was like, I want a decorator that can take some arguments and do something on the fly. And that's what I'm doing here, because I know that because you can execute a decorator just like a regular function, ta-da, I have a function, it encapsulates the scope now of that value. Cool. All right, so we're gonna learn all of this heavy lifting about decorators. And you had a question a little bit earlier.
I was going to ask, if you have multiple decorators and there's a conflict between them, I would imagine that's hard to do.
And that is why there is a lot about decorators, ensuring like the enhancements. You're going to see a lot of the ... arcs, right? Spreading arcs from one to the next, and just to make sure you can keep handing them down the pipe, because as you probably already put together, you can stack decorator, and the input of the second decorator is the output of the first decorator, and so on and so forth. Okay, very, very clean like that. All right, for all of this decorator's knowledge that we have is to simply do one thing. We're going to zoom way in here. This. Okay, I want you to pay attention to that at component, because we're going to go compare the next big thing that we need to learn, and that is class-based view transforming from object-based. Okay, so this is a view application. Cool. It's got data, it's got computed, it's got methods. We all know these things. Okay, this is a POJO. It is a plain old JavaScript object. It doesn't really have a super strong signature, and it's mostly about what we can, remember where we put the right values, and it should get picked up by the Vue interpreter. However, you can just use classes in Vue. Nothing's stopping you. Who's written Vue with classes before? Okay, and look what you get to do. We're going to zoom in here to try this out. All right, now there's one library you need that is actually supported by the Vue team. It's called Vue Property Decorator. We're going to pull component off of it, and we are going to say at component, we've just decorated everything we need to be a Vue application in a class. Vue now understands our lifecycle hooks in this class. Okay, we haven't done anything special. Created, mounted, updated, destroyed. These are all lifecycle hooks built into Vue. Okay, you have them available to you as keys on this object. But here's the cool part. You just get to use good old member variables, members of this class. Yeah, there you go. It's just message. Hello. Okay. Here's the really exciting thing is we finally get to use getters, real getters in ES6. And a getter is a method that you can reference like a value, and it will dynamically update based on something else. This is really, 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 really powerful, especially when you get into the observable reactivity engine of Vue. And what we've got is we've got get reverse message, which is based on this local value. Okay, this message, this dot message, is message right here. This is what Vue is doing under the hood with computed. It's using really, really modern getters. And of course, if you need to use a method, it's just a method, okay? You just put it on your thing and you put 2 parentheses next to it, and guess what? It's a method. Now, you do have to use full functions, no arrow functions here because of scope capture. It's very, very important. So, got to use, no arrows. Any questions about writing Vue applications as classes? Yo.
Do you have to use this change message to actually set function?
Yeah, to set a value inside of, yes. This dot message is all about the scope. This is that object. Okay. That class. Any other questions? Should look really similar to all the other Vue we've written, just with less brackets. And like anytime I can get rid of brackets, I'm pretty stoked about that. Okay. That's it. That was, by the way, that was it for congratulations for using classes in Vue now. 1 NPM library, 1 annotation, and we're ready to rock. So let's go feed some cats. I'm going to pull it up right over here. So here's a class. I'm going to zoom in. Here we go. Zoom. Nope. Hang on. Give me just a second here. Yes. Command palette. Zoom. Okay. So you saw it earlier. Component. Now, that's pretty rad. Cats equals cats. Selected is the exact same thing. We're no longer using, computed. I just have the exact same function as a get function. Here's get again. So now when I reference, let's go find disposition down in our template. Okay. Guess what? There it is. Disposition. Right? We are referencing it as a value in our template, but it's being executed like a function at runtime. That's what a getter does. And then I've got feed and I've got reset just like usual, just sitting right on the class. And we come on down here, guess what? Feed, reset. Exactly the same. So as a matter of fact, our template didn't change. Not a single line of it. The only thing that changed was our script tag. Any questions about classes in Vue? Cool? All right, rock on. Now comes the fun part. Let's learn about TypeScript. So, TypeScript is 2 things. It's a syntax, it's a way of writing some code, but it's also a tool that takes that code and turns it into JavaScript. It's 2 things. It is a superset of JavaScript, and what that means is all valid JavaScript is valid TypeScript. Now, that doesn't mean that all JavaScript you write is necessarily safe or good and that TypeScript will let you do that, okay? But it will, it looks just like JavaScript with some extra annotations on top of it. The important thing is that TypeScript is not runtime. Now, what that means is all the stuff we're gonna do in TypeScript doesn't make it to your browser. It's all stripped out entirely at compile time, so the blob of JavaScript that makes it to your browser is theoretically much safer and better. Okay, none of this stuff adds to overhead. Yo.
Is that called ART?
I don't know. What is ART?
At a time problem.
Was that? At compile? I mean, it's definitely at compile time.
AOT is ahead of time.
Was that?
AOT is ahead of time.
Ahead of time compiling. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. And yes, and what that means is we compile, and what goes to the browser should be safer, right? All of the checks and all of the routes and all of the structures are built in, but none of the TypeScript language. And that confuses some folks when they get into it, because they're like, well, does Chrome support TypeScript? It doesn't matter. Okay, so let's dive into some of the stuff with TypeScript. And this is where it gets really cool. So we've got an adder function right up top here, okay? N1, N2, we're going to imply return n1 plus n2. Well, in TypeScript, we got to go in and we have to be pretty specific about what we expect, okay? Now, of course, our use case says, well, obviously I'm going to add, well, I've been on some projects where it seemed pretty obvious what we were going to do in the body of the function, but arguments that got sent in were not necessarily up to speed on that. So let's take a look at, can someone tell me what's wrong in our second lengther function?
Lengther's not a word.
1, yes. What's the other? Yo.
Is it the number doesn't have length property? Right.
Guess what? Property length does not exist on type number. You're absolutely correct. Now, this could just be a function where we send anything in, and we're like, yeah, okay, we're gonna get the length of it. Terrible example, but it is one of those things where, like, once you set up some of your expectations, everything else is handled for you. So your teammates and everybody else, that you work with, as they're pulling in these functions, they can't just accidentally send crap in, because JavaScript doesn't care until runtime. All right. Any questions about these basic annotations? Cool. Here are the types we're going to mess with. These are the primitives in TypeScript. You've got Booleans, numbers, strings, should all be really straightforward. All numbers are floating point by default in TypeScript. It does a little bit to help us out with that. Well, I mean, that's JavaScript's behavior as well. All arrays in TypeScript must be of a specific type. You cannot mix types together in TypeScript. There's no reason to ever mix types in an array. Has anyone ever dealt with that for real, like mixed types in an array? What is wrong with how?
Salesforce?
Oh, well, okay, that's a different story.
The arguments array.
The args array, okay, fair enough. Actually, there is a way in TypeScript to handle args specifically. They take that into account. But this is great, right? Because it also says pretty clearly, all right, my list is going to be an array of numbers. Oh, cool, all right. It's all explained for me right here. I love that. Now, there's this really neat concept called a tuple, or a tuple, depending on who you talk to. Anyone messed around with React hooks yet? They're new. They're really cool. And they rely entirely on tuples. They rely entirely on returning, you get a little array all over your code of a value and then a function to mess with that value. It's very, very like higher order functional programming. It's really, really cool stuff. But just know it's just a pair of values together, right? First position and second position, right? So I've got a customer here and I've got, this is valid. TypeScript's like, cool, I'll let you do that. If I tried to throw a number in here in the second value, TypeScript would not be cool with that and it would throw an error at compile time. And my favorite thing in the world, which are enums. You probably saw them at the very, very beginning of this presentation. If you ever have a string running around your project of some constant value, you've got blue in your project. That should be a giant warning siren going off that there's something that's gone wrong, right? What you're actually dealing with is an enum. You can start grouping them together as logical collections of stuff for you to reference. So for instance, color, all right? There is a finite set of colors that your application is going to mention. Start referencing it as color.grain. This is actually was kind of annoying to me, but I really, really, really kind of fell in love with this clarity. Yo.
You say your own
What's that?
Do you create your own enum? Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. It's on the fly. Do whatever you want with it. And best part, you can actually iterate these. So in your code later on, these become iterable. So you can loop over them, you can count them, you can do all sorts of cool stuff with them. Yeah, TypeScript gives us some really, really awesome power with these kind of tools. Okay, now let's talk about shapes of data. This is the #1 place where all sorts of things go off the rails when you're dealing with APIs. You get an API from Salesforce, God forbid, and it's got a million keys on it. What keys are available on cat? Okay, so I've got a cat headability function here, right? I'm going to take in a cat, and I'm just going to arbitrarily cat.disposition on this thing. Am I sure? Like maybe in November when I wrote this, that was there, the API changed, some other code changed, we messed with cat a little bit. Do I still have disposition available to me? I don't know, right? It works for the most part. We'll find out in runtime. Well, what if we could go set some safe assumptions in our code? We can define what's called an interface in TypeScript. An interface is how you take a shape of data and you say, this is what we can guarantee with our data. I'm using an interface for cat, which has a disposition member, and then I'm also using what's called a union to say the disposition can only be one of surly, snuggly, or ambivalent, okay? So we've done 2 TypeScript concepts together. So now I know when I get my cat, I've got some safe assumptions about cat. And how do we pass that? How do we indicate that to a function? Right there. Say cat : cat. There you go. There's your cat interface. Now, find the error. Yes, you're good at spelling. Yes. Because when I wrote the slide and I was screwing around with it in the little editor, I was like, what's wrong? Why are you yelling at me? TypeScript told me that this condition will always return false since the types disposition and surely have no overlap. That's just fancy. That's computer talk for like, I can't line these things up at all, right? Because I spelled surly wrong. I spelled it like Shirley. So these are things that save you for yourself late at night, okay? And you're like, what's going on, right? And this is just a nice, simple little if check, but because we've defined those constraints, TypeScript's able to spider up that execution context to figure out what we can and cannot do here. And it tells us if we ever have impossible states in our code, okay? All right. That's TypeScript. Congratulations. Yo.
One important thing I think is worth mentioning is if you have an object that happens to fulfill an interface, TypeScript recognizes that automatically. You don't have to spell that out ahead of time.
Let's reiterate that, because that's really, really important. And this is duck typing, is the term for it. So there's a term called duck typing, and that is if my cat happens to flow into this function and happens to have a disposition on it, TypeScript's like, cool, all right? Especially if maybe there's other keys on cat that I'm not using, TypeScript is able to infer whatever it can at compile time that even though you did not tell me explicitly this was a cat, I'm able to figure out because of the shapes of this data together. Really, other languages cannot do that. I'm a big Elm guy, ELM, and you can't do that in Elm. Elm's like won't let you be that, won't be that nice to you. All right, any? Yep. And interfaces are actually most powerful when they're used against classes, so you can describe methods that are on interfaces. So that I could have a cat that inherits from animal, and all animals have leg count, for instance, okay? So I can guarantee that my cat will have a member called leg count on it, right? Very, very classic OOP, because guess what? Microsoft and TypeScript. Okay, any questions about what we're doing with interfaces and shapes of data so far? All right, and we are right on time to dive into how to get this into Vue. Now, it's as simple as running the Vue. Who's run the Vue CLI before? Click command, okay? If you're not using Vue CLI, do it. It takes 3 seconds to install. And oh my goodness, the quality of the starter kit that it gets going, the options you have. Look at these options. It's crazy. TypeScript is just something we get for free out of the box with Vue now. It's incredible. So we just choose TypeScript, do whatever else you want. And then all you do is you throw the lang equals TS. Who's done like lang equals SCSS on style tags in Vue before? Vue's amazing, right? We got these unified Vue files, .vue files. And so we just simply flagged to Vue, hey, check this. Webpack gets a hold of it, Babel gets a hold of it eventually, because these scripts are actually pulled out of our Vue files and sent through the rest of a normal Webpack build process. Well, we're able to flag it very clearly. This is going to be TypeScript, okay? And then once again, we just do exactly what we see here with that component and the property decorator, and we're ready to rock, okay? Any questions about the script tag there? Cool. Here are some of the other things you get, the other decorators you get. Props, for instance, okay? Props are a really specific thing to Vue. So we can pull in prop, and we can declare, hey, you know what? Where we would go and normally declare props in the good old Pojo, right? The Pojo Vue attempt. You're like, okay, here's a prop, here's its type. Have you ever wondered why you ever had to deal with types in props in Vue? It always seemed kind of weird, like it was kind of like trying to help us a little bit. Well, effectively, it's kind of TypeScript light, okay? And the cool part about the prop decorator is that it lets you go all the way. It lets you go use full TypeScript to verify that your props are all cool. You still have to give them the Vue concepts, capital N number instead of lowercase, right? This is the Vue version, okay? Default value, Boolean, string, and guess what? There's our union, and that's a TypeScript concept, right? So we're able to dance between the worlds of what Vue does as their syntax and then what we do over in TypeScript. A lot of this is actually going to be changed up when we go to Vue 3, and we can talk about that at the end. Any questions about props?
What's the bang?
Bang means I know what I'm doing. Trust me on this TypeScript, okay? It is right here, right? Yeah. This says, TypeScript does this thing where it says, can this sometimes not exist? Are you sure? And this is us making sure that we tell TypeScript at compile time, this will always be a prop available to us. Don't worry about it maybe not being here sometimes. Okay.
Is the not exist operator the question mark? Or is that not optional?
Yes, and you can use a question mark instead that says, right, I believe this is required, and question mark says maybe not required. Okay, I need to look into that specifically for props because this gets into some of like the esoteric parts of it. Okay, finally, this is what our code looks like. 2 minutes till 45 after, we're almost there. Laying TS, this is our cat feeder. Okay, now want to zoom in here really quick because this is the big takeaway. I'm writing code. I'm trying to access a key that doesn't exist on my cat. Okay, now normal JavaScript doesn't care. It's like, cool, I guess I'll access this. And my TypeScript runtime checker in my JetBrains IDE is like, whoa, I don't know about derp. You haven't told me about this. Why are you trying to get to this? Here's something else. You're gonna notice my code is different. You're gonna notice that now when I go to get my cat up here at the top, I'm saying this.cats.find cat name, this selected. But then I'm giving it a default value, because guess what? Trying to find a cat and then assuming there's a cat in the rest of my application isn't super safe, right? So TypeScript forced me to handle at least a safe default. Same thing down here, the feed method. All right, go find a cat. What are we at? Okay, return a default value before we start accessing members on it. And it looks like this in code. I'm just going to pull this up over in my IDE so you can kind of see it. So here's what we've done really fast. We've got our disposition type right here, our union. We've got our interface for a cat right here, because look at this. These are the things we expect. Name, disposition, is fed as a Boolean. Then I've got my cats, just an array of cat objects. So check this out. Cats, iCat, colon, iCat in brackets, okay? And look, you can fling types around your application. You can save them in one spot and share them across your app. So everyone has the same guaranteed expectations of a cat is a cat is a cat wherever you use it in your application, all right? If I ever try to do this, it won't let me. Now, why won't it let me? It says type, whole bunch of stuff, is not assignable to type cat. Object literal may only specify known properties, and faclurp does not exist on type iCat. Congratulations, we're a little safer now, right, than we were before. And I also don't deal with object creep. Okay, last thing, just so you guys can see this in action. If I'm looking here and I decide to do some junk value, it knows that it doesn't exist, right? So we've got the ability to to just bring a little bit more of a guarantee, a little bit more of a safe way of coding, and it's all TypeScript and it all turns into JavaScript at the end of the day. That's it. Any questions on this code?
What are you declaring is
The what?
what is fed in that whole thing?
Here, let's go right over here. It is, I'm glad there is one place where I can go and determine when my team asks me, what's our business logic around things? Well, guess what? You start to meta program with TypeScript after a while. You start to go define a bunch of your objects and classes and interfaces as they interact with each other way before you start to go write your code, right? You start to have interfaces that can reference other interfaces. This is an interface referencing a union, okay, or another type, and that type can reference another type, another type, another type. And so what you can do is you can kind of lay out your business case, your logic for your application in this meta place before you start just doing finds and lookups and assignments and getters and setters and stuff, that kind of stuff. And this feels really cool because this brings you into a place. Someone described types and type systems to me as 1,000,000 unit tests you don't have to write. Who here has written a unit test that is like, does function take string? True, false. Does function take what happens when we send a Boolean? What happens when we send an object, right? And you're like, oh God, I gotta do this for every possible crap that can. No. All of those unit tests have now been written for you at compile time, right? Because you set up the rules before you wrote the logic. Very, very cool thing to do. And that is it. We just took a look. Big difference here is kind of the fun part. I fell in love with TypeScript. This is my personal anecdote. I was screwing around with it, and I did a find on a giant array of objects, and it wouldn't let me move down in my application because I just did, hey, const thing equals find, ID equals whatever. And it wouldn't let me go, and I wasn't reading the error. I was like, God damn it, TypeScript, get out of my way, get out of my way. And then I found out it could have been undefined, and all of the rest of my application depended on that one value existing, and I would have only found it out if maybe the API went down in production, and then everything else would fail ungracefully. It would have been like an actual runtime error. And yeah, kind of once you see that and you get mad at TypeScript, you start to kind of be like, oh yeah, okay, I get it now. Thanks for helping me out. All right, thanks guys. Any questions here at the end? Yo.
Yeah, it's just like I was wondering, it's my first time seeing TypeScript. Is that an old thing or new thing or what?
It is Microsoft has been working on TypeScript for like 8 or 9 years. It's been around forever. As a matter of fact, I hated it. I hated it for a long time. A, Microsoft. B, it seemed like a bunch of extra crap on top of JavaScript, right? JavaScript was touted when it came out in like the 90s as being fast, no need for strong types, get working, get productive. And that's true. You can get down with JavaScript and you can start cranking immediately. What happens though is JavaScript falls off the rails really quick after a certain level of complexity and a certain number of people typing.
What I see is like TypeScript makes JavaScript like, JavaScript is weird.
Yeah.
And this makes it like a regular other language.
So, okay. It makes it a real language, doesn't it? Yes. So the whole point of JavaScript was that it didn't have types, so you could code fast. And now we're putting types back in. So the joke is kind of that, us front-enders, we kind of keep rediscovering computer science concepts. We're like, oh, we're so amazing, we got types now. And everyone's like, oh, we kind of had that for 30 years. And yes, but I think the problem before was that the techniques to get types and these structures in were generally kind of painful. They were slow, they were hard. The tooling around TypeScript and just how easy it is to get rocking is so straightforward that there's literally no reason not to be using TypeScript. And kind of once you kind of figure out the little gotchas that you've always been coding, and that's the thing, so many of us have super bad habits because we've been lucky, right? Like the find without returning something, accessing members on objects without checking for the existence of the parent keys, right? If I got a thing, dot, thing, dot, thing, dot, thing, a lot of my code just goes, I'm going to assume I can go dot, 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 and get there. TypeScript's like, no. You either have to tell me the shape of that or you have to check all of your way all the way down before you're allowed to return that thing. So that's kind of something that you're right. It's much more, I don't know if real.
From ourselves.
It saves us from ourselves. It is more classical, more enterprise. Let's go with enterprise. And there's also a reason with Microsoft backing it, I'm actually having a better time talking to clients about giant applications because I'm able to talk about type safety early in the development process. So they kind of go, oh, enterprise JavaScript, I can get behind that. And I'm like, well, okay, but it's good enough. Let's let us do it. So any other questions? Yo.
Because it's a superset of JavaScript, you don't need to convert your whole app to TypeScript in order to start using it.
That's right, and you can be very strict with TypeScript if you want. You can lock everything down, or you can enable interop, where the TypeScript's able to say, look, I'm just going to rock with JavaScript you already have. I'm just going to import some JS that you've already got, and we'll get working. You can start to refactor your stuff as you go. And there's also extremely strong linters around TypeScript as well. So you guys know the Airbnb style linter for ESLint. There is a TSLint out there that's really, really powerful that is actually being rolled into ESLint. So if you've used ESLint, it's going to fully support TypeScript. Well, it does right now with a little bit of a couple extra flags. And as a matter of fact, one thing, because it's really, really cool, if you look at our ESLint config,
Vue has its own linter that you can modify.
It does. It's got its own linting rules. There it is. There's my lint. Okay, check out these linting rules. Now this is from the Vue CLI. They did all this work. I didn't have to do any of this. Okay? Vue Essential, JavaScript linting. Cool. Vue Prettier. Let's make sure everything fits to 80 characters. Oh! Vue TypeScript has its own linting rules. That's pretty rad. Now here's the best part of all of this. This is ESLint being run through the TypeScript parser. We have full support of TypeScript in ESLint in like the last 4 or 5 weeks. Amazing. So everything's kind of coming together. There's almost no reason not to just be using this and get on this train. Cool. Yo.
You showed us how to convert from object-based view to class-based view.
Yes.
And then you showed us TypeScript.
Yes.
Do you have to use class-based view to use TypeScript?
Yes, and that's the build-up. And that's why we learned decorators to figure out what the add component was. And that's why we learned the classes, was because to go TypeScript, you have to use the decorator. So here's one of the cool things about this property decorator is this. Okay, Vue property decorator, it is also providing a giant pile of type information about everything Vue, okay? So my component now, my app component, is suddenly super decorated with lifecycle methods and all these other goodies, and TypeScript's like, cool, I get that now. I understand these things as well, okay? All right, any other questions? Yo!
Can you talk about Vue 3.0?
Yes, Vue 3 is a total rewrite of Vue 2, and it's being written from the ground up in TypeScript. Now, that doesn't mean you have to use TypeScript when you write Vue 3 stuff in the future, but they're finding they're already catching things that were in core of Vue 2 that just didn't happen to be catastrophic. Some people actually found these bugs, but they're like, whatever. TypeScript's really helped them write safer code. They've also been able to reduce a bunch of the final bundled output just simply because the code they've written is a lot safer and they can make other assumptions. The other side of the rewrite that they've been able to do is the refactoring, right? So in TypeScript, if you go in and you change a variable name, it's trivial to figure out everywhere you use that variable in every single case and find it. So they're having this really great experience as they move to Vue 3 by using TypeScript. Yep.
Does component use only current pre-built decorator?
This pre-built decorator coming from the Vue property decorator is it also provides prop and a number of other things like who here has used watch, where you watch a variable specifically for the Vue reactivity engine. You can watch a variable and just have it do. You go run a function every time a variable is changed, and that's another one of the properties, or sorry, one of the other decorators that are provided by this thing. And this is supported by the Vue team, Evan Yu and their team. Cool. All right. Any questions? Yo. So there is a model decorator, and I don't know what it does. I actually am not certain. Like as I was kind of putting this stuff together, I don't really use the model. Do you have any insight to what it does? Talk to me about model.
If you are nesting your components and you want to write a component that can implement the model contract, that out of the box that has certain strong opinions about the types of properties you need in that component. But by using the model method, you can say, actually, I want to deviate from the standard properties needed to implement the model and instead use something else.
So there it is, right? So if you've ever done, right, where you're basically implementing your own bind logic, right, to a variable, you're able to, on change the string named first argument there, right? And you're able to go do something with it. I admittedly don't do this a lot in like my code, so I kind of glossed over that. All right, guys, thanks a lot. Thanks for having me out here.
Thank you for stop recording.
Stop and recording.